welcome back to the Am Side podcast, the show that talks about all things disc golf. From weekend rounds with your mates to the Pro Tour over in the States, we've got you covered, all from an amateur perspective. My name's Rob, and I'm here with my co-host Dale.
Hello, Rob.
Hello, Dale. So, before we jump in, why don't you tell us a little bit about what our listeners can expect from this week's show?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, happy Pancake Day.
Happy Pancake Day to you too.
So today's episode, we're going to be talking about losing discs. It's a hot topic and one that I'm pretty sure that most disc golfers are going to feel. So we're going to be talking about different fan stories about how they lost their discs, our own painful stories, and then to finish it off, talking about running it over water, because I know there's split opinions on that. But yeah, looking forward to it, and let's jump into it.
Great. Before that, though, let's have a quick shout out to the sponsor of the show. So the Am Side is sponsored by dischub.co.uk. If you're looking at buying new discs and you want great prices, you want, I think, what is now an unbeatable range of brands. Last time I checked, it was 21 different brands on the website. And I don't know about you, Dale, but I couldn't name 21 brands off the top of my head. So it's quite an impressive feat. But no, definitely go check them out at dischub.co.uk, and don't forget to use our code AMSIDE5 for 5% off your order. So, Dale, you're getting a little bit of a reputation now within our group of the guy that likes to lose expensive discs. Why don't you give us your, top couple of stories about a time that you've lost a disc, how you felt, and how it happened?
Okay, first of all, I'm not really appreciating that title, but I suppose we're going to have to run it because I have lost quite a few discs. I think the story that comes to mind, first of all, was late last year, and it involves a brand new Page Pierce Stalker. Now, you lot know how much I really wanted that disc, right?
Yeah, you didn't stop talking about it, and when it came, you take photos of it. I mean, you were in love with that thing.
I was. So we get to Creeksea, and it is a horrifically windy day. But we get on with it and we start playing. I think it was, hole 7. It's the water hole at Creeksea where you're playing over the river. I get over the river and I'm like, well, that's the hard bit done. There's no water in sight. So I've got a bit of an awkward lie. So I think I'll go almost a patent pending / backhand. It was a weird stance. And I then grip lock it 90 degrees into the water. Never to be seen again.
Well, I think based on the last episode as well, or maybe the first episode when I lost my MD3, I think the patent pending stance should be renamed to the lost disc stance because it seems to be a trend.
Yes. That disc had only been thrown twice and is now at the bottom of the lake, or the river, sorry. And the worst part about it, I hadn't inked it. So what are the chances of me getting that back?
I think it's reasonably slim. I mean, I actually realised there's a couple of discs in my bag that weren't inked, so I've made sure to sort that out. But no, it's definitely something that needs to be done.
Yeah, and it was one of those things, but I don't know. At the time, I didn't really feel anything. I was like, because I didn't have that sort of, what's the word? That attraction to that disc. Because I'd only thrown it twice, and once of them was just on a field practice. So, although it hurt, I wasn't too bummed out about it. But the next disc I lost, I was very bummed out about. But I'll let you tell us one of your stories first. I don't want to steal the show from you, Rob.
Well, I think I only count myself as having lost 2 discs. One, which is the MD3, which we talked about in the first episode, and the other one is a beautiful Cax Z at Chelmsford in the river. I will also quickly mention that I also lost a leopard on the exact same hole with the exact same shot, but I was lucky enough to be able to see it in the water, and I got my keep net from my shed, went down and fished it out. So just a little bit of happy ending where it comes to me actually getting a disc back, and it shows that it is possible. But no, the Cax was the first disc that I really fell in love with in my bag. So obviously I had a lot of discs. I was growing my bag, But this thing, especially if you play Chelmsford, you'll know there's quite a few short holes, and they really lend themselves to a CAC-Z. So when I lost it, it was hole 8, if you're aware of the course of Chelmsford. Hole 8, it was just the wrong shot to make. It was the wrong disc to choose, and it just soared beautifully into the water with everyone watching. The way I felt about it, I mean, I was gutted. Weeks after weeks after weeks afterwards, I was walking down to the river. I was going on Google and looking at the height of the river day on day to see if there was a chance the river was particularly low and I could spot it. But the way I justified losing it and eventually made myself feel better was because it was a disc that I loved and used so much before it went in the river. I suppose the opposite of your Page Pierce disc. I kind of convinced myself that I got the use out of it, and then I subsequently purchased pretty much the exact same disc, same weight, same color, and and I've been enjoying it since. So I'm hopeful that it will come back to me, that disc. But there's not a disc that I'm staying awake at night about thinking about.
Right, first of all, I'm not going to sit here and let you tell our listeners that you went back to the river and got your leopard 3 out with a net, because I know for a fact that didn't happen, because that story ended with you in the water.
No, so that's the second time. The first time I was playing a club round, my leopard went in. I thought it was lost forever, and I found it. I sort of just caught the glimmer of the blue, and I fished it out. The second time, that's actually a story I completely forgotten about, which was mid-November, freezing cold, pretty much the exact same shot. Leopard went in. Both me and you could spot it in the water, but it was slightly out of reach. And something was going through my mind that just thought it'd be a great idea just to take my shoes off and jump into probably minus 0 waters to fish it out. But maybe that's why I've forgotten about it. Maybe I've suffered some kind of memory loss from sub-zero temperatures of a river in Essex. But no, that's also an example of a time I've lost a disc.
The same disc.
The same disc.
The best part of that story is that you did carry on playing. You put your socks back on, you put your shoes back on because you got your Gore-Tex shoes, which you tell everyone about, and you made sure that you finished that round.
Well, the beauty is you have a towel in your bag, right, to dry a disc. So there's no reason that couldn't be multi-purpose, and I used it to dry my legs and feet on that round.
Absolutely, mate. So I want to talk about when I lost my prized Discmania CD3.
Go for it.
So we're at Essex. Well, actually, no, I wasn't with you at the time. I was playing with Joe O'Brien. We were playing Essex. It was hole 6, which for those who don't know is a lovely par 3, massive tree in front of you. It's usually just a forehand. Well, for me, it's a forehand to the left of the tree. Let it glide down and leave myself a nice putt in. At this point, I was throwing a backhand for some reason through a very small gap that not many can get through. I mean, you've played that hole, Rob. How many times have we just hit a tree trying to go for the backhand?
We do hit that tree quite a fair bit. I would say that I still go backhand on that shot. So I think I know the story you're about to tell, and I understand why it wasn't the right shot for that disc. But I do go backhand, and I take the right hand route on that hole. But I know you've parked it beautifully with a forehand, so maybe that's something I need to switch to.
I think it's just because I know that my forehand's more dominant, and I've got I trust it more. But this is the time where I've reduced my run up. I haven't got a run up. I'm working on my form, and I think at this time I'm probably thinking, I'm still working on my form. It's not going to do what it usually does. I literally pure this CD3 through the gap. It flips up and just glides and glides and glides, and it ends up in the water. I'm pretty sure I've never thrown that disc that far. And at that point, my heart sank. I mean, you know how much I love that disc. It was the first disc where I started to get distance. It was working for me. It was, it's paining me now.
Well, I think it's a strange choice of words saying that your heart sank, seeing as it was actually your disc that sank.
Brilliant.
But no, I know how much that disc meant to you. I remember giving you a bit of a hard time when you messaged me saying, I lost my CD3, really annoyed. I loved that disc. And I just responded, loved. And I gave you a little bit of a hard time. But no, it was a disc that you didn't have for very long, but you were loving throwing.
Well, I didn't have it long, but I had it. I mean, because I hadn't had it long, but we play a lot of disc golf on a Sunday, so it actually had a lot of rounds. But it was nice. It was getting beat in. It was it was the perfect disc. But I never replaced it. Well, I did, I suppose. I've got my Enigma now, but it's a bit different. But I even think about it now. I want to move on. I don't want to talk about it anymore.
Well, let's move on, but let's not move on from that hole, because I think, I mean, that hole at Essex has got, I don't know, you've got a slight reputation with that hole, Dale. So this isn't a story about you losing a disc, but this is a story very much involving you. So one of my favourite disc golf stories was we were playing Essex, hole 5, same hole that hole 6 rather. No, hole 8.
Yeah, no, hole 6.
Hole 6.
Where have you got hole 8 from?
I have no idea.
Hole 8's the par 4.
I'm losing all really. I'm just losing it.
It's definitely hole 6.
Hole 6. We were so for the listeners that don't know that hole, which I'm sure is most of you, it's essentially has a death putt, so it's backed onto a lake. So if you're putting from the tee, you've got about 1.5 meters of ground before you go into the water. So we're playing with a friend of ours. He wasn't the most confident at the time that he was going to make the basket and hit the putt. So Dale very kindly offered to stand behind the basket, just in case worse comes to worse. If the disc misses, Dale would be able to bat the disc or catch the disc or prevent it from going in the water. Now, what subsequently happened was our friend threw the disc. Dale, I think flail is the only word really to describe it. He sort of flung every limb, every which way, almost falling into the lake behind him himself, almost ignoring the disc and doing some kind of strange jester dance, and the disc soared beautifully into the lake. Now, it was a happy story because it was seeable. We got it with a stick and we retrieved our friend's disc. But the confidence of Dale saying, "Oh, don't worry, I'm here. I will stop this disc going into the lake," and then decided that the best way to stop that disc was through some kind of interpretive dance.
It gets me every time, man. Literally, I just remember standing there and go, "Michael, shot, mate. If it comes at me, I've got it." And then I don't know what happened. Every limb was being thrown around, and the disc ended up in the water. But we got it back. That's the main thing. We got it back. But thank you for bringing it up.
Almost the fact we got it back makes the story worse, because if you did your dance and lost the disc, it would have potentially been a much better story. But anyway, it's kind of that. It's that point of the show where we wanted to talk about some of our listeners' stories about how they've lost discs or actually got discs back. We put a message out on Facebook and Instagram for your stories, and really we've been overwhelmed by the amount of responses. We were actually talking about how do we pretend to get some stories in, but that wasn't anything we needed to do, and we absolutely inundated with responses. We've picked out our favorites. We've kind of categorized them and broken them down into different sections. So I think it's a pretty good time to share them. The first category that I've pointed out was ones that there are times where the disc might not have meant a lot to the player in terms of emotionally. So we all have the disc in the bag, which means a lot to us because we've played round after round. We've had highs and lows with that disc. But these examples are ones where it's just a shame that the disc was lost because of how rare or expensive or how beautiful those discs have now become, and it almost hurts us as lovers of some collectible discs to hear that they are no longer in existence, or at least they may be in the bottom of a lake or in a bush, or just been lost to the nether by another player picking them up. So the first one comes in from Harry Messenger. He lost 3 first run Goats. I want to say goat. I have no idea how it's pronounced, but a Castoplas disc. Um, the market for these discs now is almost insane. You're talking hundreds of pounds each. So the fact that he's lost 3 of them on the same hole mind, um, I mean, that's literally throwing money away. He did state that this happened before the collector market for these discs really became as popular as it is now. So obviously at the time it wouldn't have felt as big of a loss. But my my sympathy definitely goes out for him for losing those discs.
Oh,
Um,
massively.
and then the next one in this category from me is from Martin Colbert. We gave him a shout out on last week's episode about his sort of ability to really price and value discs well when he's selling used discs. But he sent in a photo of a really beautifully custom dyed T-Bird. Now, obviously, custom dyes take time; they're one-off, and he unfortunately lost this beautiful custom dyed T-Bird. So, again, something that isn't replaceable, and definitely something that's not great to hear.
No, definitely. I mean, anytime anyone loses a disc is not good to hear. But you're right. We've been inundated with messages, which is fantastic. I mean, some of the messages come from overseas, Rob, which is mental.
Oh, I mean, we didn't even expect to get messages from out of the county, so to get some from different countries is really something amazing.
Yeah, one was from Faith Green. She said that she had a Champ signed binder and that she's lost it twice in Monterey, 2 times in San Jose, and once in Oregon. So I count that as 5 times. She just temporarily misplaced it again in a pond 2 days ago. So for the 6th time, and she actually sent us a video of her losing it. So I'm sure we'll put it up on our socials at some point when we're up.
Yeah, that's the plan. We've got a nice story that's going to go along with the release of this podcast or this episode. So definitely watch out for our story on Instagram to see Faith losing the disc, which is not often something you catch on camera. So we're glad to have it.
Well, all you need to do is follow me around with a camera and you'll find it all the time.
That is very true.
Right, should we move on to some slightly rarer losses?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, I mean, you've got the rarest of all losses there.
Yeah, so Charlie's messaged in, Charlie O'Brien, and this pains me that he lost a Claw MD3. Now, for those who don't know the market, these discs at the moment are retailing for anything from 200 to 300 quid, and he's just throwing it away.
I mean, I've spoken before on the first episode about how my favorite disc of all time is an MD3, and the fact that you could lose a Claw MD3. I mean, we're not blaming Charlie here. Let's get that clear. We're not blaming him. We're on his side. It's almost heartbreaking. I believe from a chat or a message or something I've seen from him in the past, it wasn't inked either. I believe. I think he did an unboxing of a few more Claw MD3s, and I believe it wasn't inked. So I think there's very minimal chances he'll ever get it back. But yeah, and I think that really sort of asks the question around throwing collector's discs. Now, I personally don't have anything in my bag, and I don't tend to buy plastic if I'm not willing to throw it, and obviously the chance of losing it. I know you have a couple of collector discs, and you keep them out of your bag, and you keep them as collector discs. So,
yeah,
but Charlie, I'm sure, was loving throwing that Claw MD3. So you know what, it was the risk he took, and it's heartbreaking, but but I understand why he was throwing it.
it is heartbreaking, but I mean, his brother throws them as well. I've played with him at Essex, and he throws them as normal discs. But I also then think, what's the difference between his MD3 and your MD3? It's both the same mold, just different foil.
Well, you could argue that runs are slightly different, so they fly differently. But no, definitely. I mean that's the golden question, isn't it? Around collector discs, what is the difference apart from a slightly different shaped bit of foil on top that's been stamped?
Yeah, definitely. That's a completely different topic.
Completely. I know we'll be getting into collector's discs coming up in a later episode, so make sure you listen out for that. Now, a topic that that came up in Tom Potter's response on Facebook. Now, we're not going to read all of Tom's stories around losing discs. I think he might actually take the title from you, and probably definitely does take the title as the guy in the UK scene that's is known for losing discs. Now, Tom has lost them in lakes, in ponds, in rivers. In the first episode, I mentioned that I started throwing with a couple of discs I found in a boggy swamp, and one of them was Tom's, and that's how I actually got to know him.
Shock.
But the point that really got me with Tom's is when he mentioned, he said, I've thrown discs through open windows at Colchester University on 2 separate occasions, one of which made an incredibly loud noise as it hit an unknown object inside. Now, that would obviously be a point of panic, and you probably wouldn't stick around to see how expensive the thing that you broke was. But this really got me thinking about what it is to lose a disc. So actually, in that occasion, that disc isn't lost. He knows exactly where it is. And really, if he did the work, he could find out the exact room that's in. So that's, if anything, far from lost. That's stored away for a rainy day, I guess you could say. So,
and embarrassing.
I mean, slightly embarrassing. I don't think anything would drive Tom to try and knock on that door and say, sorry, I think I've just broken something in your flat. Do you mind if I have my disc back? Because it's kind of reminiscent to when you go around your neighbour's house and ask, can I have my ball back, please, sir? Which obviously wouldn't be ideal. But I think it raises that interesting question about what is considered lost. So I know you've mentioned before off the show that if you throw a disc into a lake and you can see that disc, that probably isn't considered lost because you know exactly where it is. There is a difference, though, if you throw a disc in a lake. Yes, you know exactly where it is, but you have no idea where in the lake, or it's not visible. I would consider that lost. But I think it does raise the question of what really is a lost disc.
Yeah, I suppose, I think the definition of a missing or a lost disc should be its whereabouts is unknown.
Yeah.
Because if you can see that disc in that lake, but you can't reach it, it's still there. You go to the supermarket, you want to get the tomato ketchup, you can't reach it. It's still there. You just can't have it.
I love that analogy. I think, enough said. So I think we've had examples where we've thrown discs into building sites and we've had to be a little bit sneaky and potentially, let's not say break in, but allow ourselves into a building site to get the disc back. But obviously, if there wasn't a way into that building site, that would be obviously kind of heartbreaking because you can see it perfectly through the fence, or you can see it perfectly.
Rob, it wasn't a disc; it was a bloody mini.
It was a fantastic mini. But I'm worried that this episode might be used against me in a court of law. So I think we bring that to a close. But one last story I wanted to say from a listener, and one that I think goes perfectly into the next part of this episode, came from Stephen Williams, and he was talking about the time he was having a putter-only round with his son, and his son, slightly unfortunate grip lock, threw his favourite AVR into the pond of the course they were playing. Although really sad, the son obviously was upset because if it's your favourite disc, you absolutely are going to be upset. But what I really liked about Stephen's response to on Facebook was that he mentioned that you could always replace a disc, but what you can't replace is the idea of getting better and going for it. I think that's, as disc golfers, we're always trying to push ourselves. We're trying to see what we're capable of on the course. But the challenge to make yourself better is worth losing a disc that's replaceable and not the most expensive.
Yeah, I agree. I think it goes to water is a disc golfer's nemesis. It's that age-old question. You've got water. Are you going to play safe or are you going to play aggressive? I know when we first started at Chelmsford at hole 8, where you've lost a few discs. When I first started there, you got that mandatory, and it's like I went so close to it because I was so scared to throw a disc over the water, but I'd end up on hole 1's fairway because I needed it to cut in. Whereas now, I'd throw the destroyer probably over the water and get it to cut in and leave myself 30 foot. But that's now rather than. I don't know you.
Yeah, I think as you get to know your discs, you get to have a lot of faith in your bag. So the the whole later Essex, you actually have, like say, a Mando to the sorry, at Chelmsford, whole later Chelmsford, you've got a Mando to the right and actually the river's to the left. So you actually have to force a disc out towards the river. Now I'm still wary. I probably don't do my forearm tee shot as aggressively as I could play that, because my stable drivers that I use on that shot are ones that I don't want to lose. So there's definitely something in my head which is still making me wary of that hole. However, I am starting to get to the point where I'm thinking, you know what, I need to go for the right shot rather than the shot that's not going to lose a disc. Sometimes they are one in the same, and obviously a lot of the time the right shot isn't going to get lost. But I think definitely the idea of water and playing over water being a huge part and a critical part of the game. I think it's not something you can avoid, and just to accept that at some point in your disc golf career, you could go 5 years without losing a single disc. But at some point, if you're playing the game, you're going to lose a disc into some water. I mean, look at holes like Maple Hill. Maple Hill, the first tee is what, 350 feet over water.
Yeah, there's a lot of water there, and it goes down to Essex hole 5. I mean, you made a good point there about, you don't want to throw those discs as far out as you would or be as aggressive because you don't want to lose it. Whereas hole 5 at Essex, how many times have I stood up to that tee and I'm like, I don't want to lose this disc, but you force yourself to throw it because you don't want to be that guy that bums out and it's like, oh, I'll just take the drop. You want to be aggressive. I lost my favorite X heat on that exact hole because I wanted to go over, and then I turned it over and it landed in the water.
Absolutely. I think, and I think we should definitely discuss the alternatives as well. So on Essex, hole 5, I still throw an Innova Dragon. Now, the only reason I throw it on that hole is not because I like that disc, but because it floats. And the reason I throw that disc is because I'm a new player, I'm getting used to throwing over water, and I know that my technique isn't consistent as I'd like it to be. So that if I do grip lock, if I have an early release, if I don't get the height, if I throw it nose down, I should get that disc back. Now, as my confidence grows, I hope to be starting to use discs that are actually designed for the shot I want to throw rather than the fact they'll just float. Also, sort of an honorable mention is blizzard discs. So a lot of people know that if you get a disc in blizzard plastic, or the alternatives that brands have out there, under a certain weight, that will also float. So that's also a great alternative for someone that is looking for, say, you mentioned destroyer. If you want to throw a destroyer on a shot, there's a chance you could get a blizzard destroyer in a light enough weight that will allow you to have the sort of peace of mind that it will float.
Yeah, I think I have the opposite approach because I don't like the feel of, first of all, blizzard plastic and the floating discs. And I will bag some older plastic that I beat in and that I know that are, that I've thrown before and I've got the confidence in them. Instead of, and if I lose them, then I lose them. I'm not too bothered about it. But I want to make sure that I'm using the right discs rather than the ones that just float. But I think you're right. You're coming away from those plastics anyway, and you're going to throw better plastic anyway.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things you can do to get used to water. You, like I said, you can throw floating discs, you can throw blizzard plastics, you can throw old discs that, you know what, you might have already decided that they've been lost and they're just worth giving it a go. I think no matter what, the conclusion needs to be that water really is a part of the game. It's not something we can be mad at. It's not something that is going to go away anyway anytime soon. So really just embrace the fact that water's there to stay, water holes there to stay, and we're going to start losing some discs, because at the end of the day, losing discs is really a rite of passage for a disc golfer. If you haven't lost a disc, go out there and throw it into the water, and really christen yourself as someone that has done it before, because it definitely helps you get the mindset of being okay if potentially a disc or a shot doesn't go your way. With that being said, I think we've reached a really great conclusion to this week's show. I just want to have another shout out to the sponsor of the show, dischub.co.uk. Make sure you check them out for some fantastic brands and plastic on sale over there. Dale, why don't you remind our listeners of how they can get 5% off?
Yeah, they can get 5% off by clicking the link in our Instagram bio and then use AMSide5 for a 5% discount on their order. Also, just to say, we said it before, we love getting your feedback. So thank you everyone who's messaged us, who's DM'd us on Instagram. Keep it coming. Our email address is amsidepodcast@gmail.com. We love hearing your feedback, and it's only going to make this show better. You know, we're 3 episodes in now, and we're absolutely loving it. We love recording them, and we can't wait to keep going.
Yeah, it's safe to say that today's episode really wouldn't have been the same without that listener feedback. So please do keep it coming. But until next time, if we don't see you on the course, we'll see you on the AM side.